welcome back to the View from the Rock podcast. This is part 2 of our episode about, so far you've heard Final Four preview. You've heard about a musical genre, which in this case was something near and dear to our hearts here in the PNW, and that is the four major grunge bands and what our favorite song of each of those four is. And just in case you didn't hear part 2, I'd probably go back to part 1, but a little recap is that those top 4 grunge bands are Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, and Nirvana. And we almost went on from part 1 to part 2 because we had a great transition there about Oregon State and it being one of the best universities in Oregon. We also almost got Jason Morgie to admit that they're the greatest university in the state of Oregon because
Pacific.
Because he hates the Ducks so much. But he remembered that at one point he won a national championship with Pacific. Which, what city is that in?
We did not win a national championship.
Whatever. You act like you did.
We were the best team in Pacific history.
Okay. Yeah.
We made it to the Sweet 16.
Now, Sweet 16, like in Division 3?
NAIA?
NAIA, okay.
Yeah.
No shade. That was all respect right there. We're talking about now our beer of the week, which is pretty unique. And even before we move on to that, I guess there was a complaint about one of our previous choices. I think it was actually my week. I chose PBR tall cans, and a friend of the podcast, the Bolins, felt that PBR should never be a beer of the week, and instead Guinness should be the beer of the week every week, which I guess speaks for itself that we were correct and they were not. No, I love Guinness. It's great. Anything you guys need to add to that before you continue?
Kelly loves Guinness, I think, more than Tom. But I think Tom was just, when we go out from the hopper on the first 2 episodes with a really good IPA and then go PBR, I think he was a little disappointed. I think a few others were as well. But guess what? We have the power.
Yeah, and I think that I think I was honest with my assessment, although I should probably go back and listen now that I say that it's sweet and easy to drink, and it has a place in my history as being the cheap beer from college, and has a place as far as just something that's easy to drink, whether it be a hot summer day or sitting in the Yellow Dog Studios.
A PBR is a C+, and we need things that are C pluses.
Yeah,
It's when you crave. I used this example before: a quarter pounder with cheese. Sometimes a quarter pounder with cheese. You go to McDonald's, $2.99 or whatever the special is that day. You go there with a $5 bill. You get a quarter pounder with cheese, and you leave there feeling better.
As someone here on the podcast made up a rating system, it would definitely be a 1.
It's a 1,
not a 0.
It's definitely not a 0. It's a 1, and it's not up for consideration.
Whereas
it's a 1.
For you, a 0 might be like a Montucky.
A Montucky is like the Bare Naked Ladies of beer.
So, by the way, last week coming home from a concert with Sign Dog,
Dude, he loves Montucky.
I had a Montucky for the first time ever.
It's horrible.
Oh, 0. We were stopped off of I-5 just in the valley at that Shell.
Yeah.
And he comes out, and I'm like, oh, my God, that's the beer that we just talked about on the podcast. I didn't even want to taste it.
What I would say is a Montucky, probably not a 1, probably a 0. And it's only because there are so many other great options. And I feel like Montucky exists because some hipsters went to Montana and made a beer with some majestic creature on the front of it and said, we're going to be able to sell this to a lot of people that look like us because we're going to market it as the hipster cheap beer.
It's officially a Montucky cold snack.
You're right. And so they can just say, hey, I could go for a cold snack right now. It's genius marketing.
Yeah. It's good marketing. Now, the Guinness, which you brought up a moment ago, it's not my favorite beer. I like a Guinness. It's not my favorite beer, but I will say this. A Guinness poured into a pint glass is beautiful.
And
it's mesmerizing.
You're supposed to pour it hard so it gets all that nitrogen foaming out of it.
And that's how it just does that unique.
You get that nice velvety head.
Oh my gosh.
I learned these things when I went to the.
Cheers to Kelly Bolin for loving Guinness as her favorite.
And you know, the surprising thing always to me is when I have a regular Guinness is how light it is. It's not dark. It's not difficult to drink.
It's a shockingly low calorie beer.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like
120.
Yeah.
120, only 4.1% or 4.2. Like, it's a beer that you could have as a summer beer, even though it looks like a winter beer.
I would agree with that.
It looks scary, and then when you first take a sip, it's
very smooth.
Yes.
Well, speaking of smooth beers, we have a bunch of beers here before us who are looking quite tasty. In fact, there are 4 of them. These 4 beers are from a very good friend of the podcast, Ross Metcalf. His son currently attends Oregon State University. And I believe that he went there and got these from the brewmaster himself. And so we've got some notes that are from the brewmaster, and he gave us some tips, I believe, on how we should be consuming these. Did I miss something there? This is from the Food Science and Technology Department. Technology. That's amazing that beer is considered part of the technology department. I'd like tech even more if I knew that.
I think today's a special day.
Oh, it's an amazing day. We've been waiting 2 weeks for this.
We have 4 unique beers.
Amazing beers that have never, ever been reviewed on any beer app.
So Untapped.
We are ahead of Untapped right now.
Does Untapped even know about these beers?
Untapped has never seen them.
So
0 reviews on these beers. We are giving the very first reviews of these beers.
And is that going to stay here, or are you guys going to get back on the Untapped just to make that entry and then get back off?
We retired as legendary status, and we're not going to go back.
Oh, I've never heard that from you before. Also, something in the notes that we probably should say is it's a working creamery for cheeses. There are stills. It is a winery and is a brewery that's big enough to be classified as a mid-sized microbrewery, which that's interesting. You got the mid-size and the micro.
So what is the first, Mr. Morgenthaler, what is the first beer that we are going to taste?
So first off, just a couple things from the brewmaster. These are all very unique beers. These styles are the only ones we bottle. So that's why somehow Ross got them. I don't know how Ross was able to get these beers.
Maybe he said that he knows the View from the Rock podcast.
Well, and if you look at the bottles that are in front of us, there are no labels on them. It looks like from someone's homebrew kit.
And it's a little Sharpie on the top.
Yeah.
They're all dark bottles. Yes, homebrew.
It looks like we're in a back room at Harry Potter's.
I was thinking of Strange Brew. Maybe you were going to go there, but yeah.
Okay, so our first beer number 1, is the Goza German-style beer. 50-50 malt and wheat malt with some orange juice added in the fermenter. You can pick up the orange notes. So it's 3.5% ABV. Salt level is a little higher, so it has some briny character.
Wow.
Ooh.
Are you guys ready for this? This is a game changer.
And I've seen this kind of beer.
I'm so excited.
But before we drink this, can you tell me, I've always pronounced this as a gose.
He has no idea. He's just reading. He
reading.
Never has heard of this beer before.
I'm just reading what the brewmaster says. Pronounce Goza.
So if I walk into the Rosario Market,
Goza in one of the movies?
Goza. If I walk into the Rosario Market, can I go in and say, "Do you have any Goza?"
And it's not gyoza like the
not gyoza. Like, there's no Y in there, but it's spelled Gose, but it's pronounced Goza.
Now, when I've come across these in the past, I feel like people have said they're sort of a summertime beer, and it's similar from my experience to like a sour.
It looks visually, it almost looks
soury.
It does look like a soury, almost looks like a glass of Chardonnay.
Yeah, slightly opaque. Hey, here we go. Cheers.
Oh,
Well,
What do you think?
that's tasty.
he's not wrong about the orange and the briny character. He
I
obviously
get that
knows
immediately.
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about. I would say it feels a little bit like a summertime shandy, a little bit
Ooh,
like
the
that,
summer
like,
shandy.
yeah,
I really
but
like
better
it.
quality.
It does. I think in the summer this would be very refreshing.
Oh, I 100% agree.
Now, the one thing I will say, it kind of comes in with some of that melon character towards the end, kind of in the back of the throat after you've had a few sips. And I know there are some people who don't like the melon flavor, but I think it's pretty good. I could see being at Camino Island drinking this on my deck.
That's a nice beer.
This could be a nice beer on the boat after you've caught a couple salmon.
What would you pair it with?
I feel like I could have some Asian food with this. Like, if you think about what are the name of the beers that you can get, like Nippon, is that one?
An Asian beer?
Yeah.
I'm not too familiar in Asian beers, even though I'm married to an Asian.
I'm trying to think of what those are.
Sapporo?
Sapporo.
Thank you. Oh
That's
my
the only
gosh.
beer.
Well, ones like
Ugh.
that, like they tend to be drier, like almost more towards the sake, Like
Yeah,
it's almost in some ways like has some, like you said, I don't know if you said champagne, but almost some sort of sake qualities to it.
That might be a beer that we would drink right after we play some volleyball on the grass on the Morgie compound.
The last time we did that, I got injured. I've been injured like 4 times at the Morgie compound.
All playing volleyball. Oh, no.
One
and
time was horseshoes.
Okay. Are we ready for beer number 2?
Yeah, and I would just like to clarify that we're not just pounding 4 beers right now. We put these in little tasting flights, almost like shot glasses, so that we could taste them, and by the end, still know that we're in the middle of a podcast.
I think they're 4 ounces.
I was going to say 2 ounces.
I think that you did a really good job, Swap, of pouring these, so they all look like they're in the same level, but the glasses are a little different, so I have no idea.
Mr. Morgenthaler, what is the next beer?
So beer number 2 is called a Saison.
Say that again.
Saison?
I'm looking it up now because I've always said
there was
Saison or Saison.
Saison?
I think you said it right the first time.
Because I see that and I think Saigon, and so I think, oh, it's a Saison.
Oh, okay.
But it translates to season. So
Yes.
saison?
Oh, that sounds like season when you say it like that. Yeah, I mean that's
Okay.
probably right.
So this is a Belgian style beer. And like Swappy said, translate to season. Typically a summer beer for field work. Very champagne-like with some pink peppercorns for a unique flavor. This has malt, flaked rice, and oats in the grain bill.
Ooh.
And this is a 6% ABV.
So immediately you say it's very champagne-like. I'm just noticing even like carbonation-wise, this has been bubbling this whole time. The
Very
rest of them
Oh, yeah, I
effervescent.
can
stopped.
still see
Yeah.
it. I didn't even notice till now.
Very effervescent.
Here we go.
Okay.
I'm trying to smell it to see if I can get some of those pink peppercorns. I don't know that I'm really picking it up.
Oh, wow. I can pick up the peppercorns.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's got a definite different flavor.
Oh, I wouldn't say that there's heat to it.
No.
But right there at the end, I felt a little tickle on the tongue that I would attribute to what I normally feel from having a little pepper.
That is very unique flavor.
I think both of these beers are not beers that I could drink several of. I think both of them are very tasty in their own right, but they might be like a one and done paired with What would you pair this saison with?
For me, if I had to choose between these, I would go with the saison. I find it really easy to drink, despite it being 6%. And with how crazy IPAs are these days, with their high alcohol percentage, I know that 6 isn't that crazy, but I feel like I could actually drink more than one of these. I like it.
I'm trying to think what I would pair it with. Very unique. I almost would like maybe a summertime flank steak.
Ooh, or maybe some carne asada.
Yeah.
I was going to say a nice summertime charcuterie board.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think the colder that one is, the better. I already feel like it's starting to get a little less cold, and this is definitely one of those crisp cold ones.
Are we ready?
Not quite yet. I'm
Okay.
still there's a lot of flavor notes here with this saison. I'm still trying to.
Is there some banana? Do you get notes of banana?
There is a little something there that I can't quite place.
It'd be very interesting. A shout out to the head brewer at Oregon State.
Do you know his name?
I do not, and maybe we can forward this to Ross, and he can get a hold of him and tell him how to listen.
I don't know if the University of Oregon has a head brewer or not, but if they do, he probably makes malt liquor.
Did I say University of Oregon?
No.
Oh. But the University of Oregon.
Swap, did you just say if the U of O had a head brewmaster, they would only make malt liquor?
Hey,
I did.
The U of O is not smart enough to do this kind of beer.
They'd end up making hooch and killing people.
Oh, my God. Shout out to OSU. Go Beavs.
What
Hey,
would be really
Big
great?
Chris, real quick. I haven't forgot about you, bud. Love you.
It is in the show notes, so... and you forgot the Wiz.
No, we talked about the Wiz already,
really?
didn't we?
Do you remember the Wiz on Seinfeld?
Thank you.
So
Do you remember his line from that episode?
nobody beats the Wiz.
Nobody.
There's a guy with a crown.
And nobody beats the Wiz. Nobody.
Nobody.
So he had a furniture store, I believe, or like a mattress store.
Maybe
something
electronics.
Like that. Yeah. And so originally he was on there, and he would have the crown on, and he'd say, "Nobody beats the Wiz." Ha ha, nobody. And then that was like an old commercial. But then he starts to date Elaine, and she's enamored with him. He's got this sparkle in his eye. And then Jerry realizes who that is, tells Elaine, and it's ruined. I think if it's possible to take the podcast on the road, it would be a real interesting thing to sit down with a brewmaster, because I know nothing about brewing beer. And it would be sweet to pick the mind of a brewmaster. Definitely wouldn't want to go to University of Oregon and see what they know or don't know about beer, but I'm pretty impressed with OSU so far. Two styles I normally don't drink, but I'm enjoying.
So the third beer, Mr. Morgenthaler.
The third beer is what is called the Double. It's a Belgian-style beer, so it's 7.4% ABV. Has a Pilsner malt, rice, dark malts, and maple syrup. So from the Boston Beer Company, they use it in an Utopia.
It's Utopia.
Utopia. A beer they sell for almost close to $100 or more.
Is that the maple syrup comes from
That's gotta
Boston
be it.
Beer Company?
Or the same maple syrup that they use is the one.
I don't know that answer. I think let's just.
I have heard of Utopia before. It is an expensive, well-known concoction that they make.
Really?
Now, it's interesting when you look at those things that they list there. Like, this is going to be really sweet. Like, so they've got malt, rice, dark malts, maple syrup. All these really sugary, starchy things that are going to get the alcohol content up, but are probably going to be real sweet to taste.
I can hardly wait to try it.
And when looking at the beer, it is the darkest of the four.
And it's a beautiful color.
So for
Definitely
us,
dark honey amber.
oh, so it's kind of ambery looking. That's what I would say. Yes.
Yeah, it's not going to taste like an amber though.
I was gonna
sure.
I was gonna use the word chestnut.
Yeah, it's darker than your typical amber. It's got a more red to it.
Let's give it a taste.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, smell it. Smell it before you try it. It's got a. There you go.
Oh, you can smell that syrup, can't you?
You can smell the maple.
Oh, that smells so good.
Oh my gosh, smells like an IHOP.
Man,
This is a one-of-a-kind beer tasting that we are doing.
you know,
I think we could say this is number one in the world.
This is probably number one in the world right now.
I'm not sure what we're number one in the world at or what is number one, but I can go along with that. I would say tasting that third one, all of these beers or styles of beers I don't drink. If I go to a place and I see those, I immediately look past them, and I normally don't want anything to do with them. And all three of these are really good. They're really good.
This, upon looking at just the beer notes and looking at the beer, I would have thought it would have been darker.
It's shocking how
It's
smooth
not.
it is.
Yes.
So normally when I drink a Belgian style beer, it's overly sweet. It has loads of melon flavor that I get in it, and I have a hard time enjoying it. But that is super smooth. It doesn't finish with any sort of weird aftertaste like I normally get from a Belgian. Yeah,
That's a good beer. That's a good beer. Now, what would you pair that with?
I think I could have some brats that I've put on the grill, and I've kind of let them marinate in maybe one of these beers with some onions, and they've boiled for a little bit, and then I take them off and I put them over the coals, and I just make them kiss the grill and get a little charred up. That's what I would do.
Oh man, that sounds amazing. Now
Maybe
that
some
we're getting
banana
into
peppers on top.
spring, we should, on a future podcast, talk about top 3 grilling meats.
Oh, yeah. This is opening a whole new world. I'm surprised at how smooth it is. You would think from something that's that dark looking, there'd be some real bitterness to it.
It's the first taste, and you're like, oh, it's not as dark as you think.
No, not at all.
Is that the maple syrup that makes it that dark?
I would think that the dark malts there is probably what it gives it is giving it that color. And normally if it's dark malts, that would be roasted malt, I would assume.
I just want to keep tasting it.
I'm just curious if that bottle is $100 bottle.
That is interesting that they've connected the $100 bottle with this double.
This is a really good beer.
It's like I enjoyed those first two, but this third one is beyond, but I would say by far.
There's a lot going on here.
I think that I agree with what you said, Ruck. If I'm at a brewery, I'm not picking these beers. I'm just going to my normal go-to.
IPA.
What's an IPA? Pick me one.
Yeah, because for the most part, I'm going to be happy with them. I've tried these beers before, and there's always some sort of odd flavor in there that I'm like, I struggle to drink the rest of it. Whether it be a random melon flavor or some banana, or sometimes they'll get like that smoked beer, and you get the little smoky flavor at the end. There's a lot of weird stuff out there you can get, and I normally associate all 4 of these with that, and none of them have had that, and this one especially is really good. Now I'm looking at the bottom of my cup here.
Do you see any?
There's some floaters. I'm wondering if it's
Really?
just not a clean cup or if just not filtered.
Sediment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's sediment.
Did you see that too?
I did.
Yes.
I actually plucked out what may or may not have been a dark malt while I was drinking it.
And I can guarantee you that these glasses have been sanitized and washed. multiple times.
Well, swap. When I saw you pluck that out, my first thought was, oh, he got a hair in his glass. But I don't know how that would have happened because it wouldn't have been from either of you guys.
No, not a lot of hair here on the View from
Speaking
the Rock
of
podcast.
Miss Swappy got a new haircut.
I did. I went.
Zero.
I did. I went 0 today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You look really.
Is that a weekly thing?
Ideally, but it's harder, when I'm not going to the scalp like our friend here, Mr. Morgenthaler, it's harder after only a week to not miss a spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I go every 2 weeks. I spend a good portion of my day underneath a baseball cap.
Right.
And so, I can get away with it. But, it's a battle. Male pattern baldness is a battle.
I'm curious.
It's okay.
Well, I'm heading that way. I feel like I'm experiencing the thinning. Definitely wear hats a lot more than I used to. At what point did you guys feel like, you know what? Let's buzz this guy. Like what age or what was the final straw where you said, nope, we're done?
It's a good question. Mr. Morgenthaler?
I don't know. I feel like in my late 20s,
Yeah.
I still had a little hair, but then I like it short. And
Like, was it, you were getting a bald patch in the
Yeah, a
back
little.
or was it really just in the front?
both.
Okay.
And just decided to just go for it, and I love it. Now it's like my kids want me to grow it out a little, and I feel like I would be Island View Court, like a cul-de-sac. Like just hair growing around, and then up top is bald.
Again, everything relates to Seinfeld. There's an excellent episode where Elaine is dating a guy who shaves his head. And the comment is this guy from the future? Is he an alien? And she sees his driver's license, and he has an impressive head of hair. And she asks him to grow it back, and he's went bald since.
So up until about 5 years ago, I would get a nice haircut, and I'd use some product in my hair. I'd wake up in the morning, get in the mirror, and shape it. But it became a battle because I slowly but surely was losing hair in the upper back. And when you have a haircut, a nice professionally done haircut, the longer it gets with that hole in the back, the more you are getting into, you're kind of becoming comb over guy if you're not careful.
Yeah, you got to avoid that.
Oh, yeah.
So I would have to get a haircut more and more often. And that would become an issue. Then I would get a sunburn on the one part that was exposed. And then what really was the tipping point was COVID. When I just said, the heck with it, I'm just gonna buzz it. So I've buzzed it ever since. And I think all three of us here share a trait in that our heads are beautifully shaped, and I think we just need to share that with the world.
Well, hey, real quick.
I don't know if mine's beautifully shaped. We're going to see at some point. I know I'm going to have to shave it off. It's a damn fearing quite greatly.
So now, I took the advice of our good friend of the podcast, Mr. Johnston, and I bick after I shave. I have a head shaver,
Okay.
which is amazing. And now I feel like I'm going to do it tonight after the podcast. I'm going to do a head shave and a bick.
So do you feel like after a hot shower,
Oh, it feels amazing.
it's
and
a better
I just
time to
rub
shave?
my head. It's just so
Do you put
shiny.
shaving cream on it?
I do.
Okay.
So after I do the electric, I do a bick a little bit on certain areas. And now I'm infatuated with just bald. Like big bald. That's all I want.
Do you have to be?
So right now I feel like my hair is super long.
It looks fairly freshly shorn.
If you are not here in the recording studio, which you are not if you are a listener to the podcast, Mr. Morgenthaler has no hair, and he says it feels long.
And there's a
But
shine
when you
on
look,
his head.
what you feel it, it's probably an eighth of an inch. Maybe like it's just different. Now I just want it big bald all the time.
In order for this to not be part 2, that's an hour and a half, we probably should try our last one, number 4.
So we have 1-4. One more beer number 4.
That is
not
correct.
1-4. Mr. Morgenthaler, what can you tell us about this last beer?
So this is called the Quad.
Ooh.
Which makes sense, number 4.
So it's a Belgian-style beer. This is a doozy. 10% ABV.
And for those of you in the listening audience, we poured about 1 ounce of this.
And if you think about our first beer, the Goza, that was a 3.5. So it just gradually goes up from there, which is amazing.
Hey, I'm going to be honest. Are you guys getting any sort of like tingling from the tongue, like from that peppercorn? I feel like I can still sense it. No? I'm just...
I just...
I'm losing my mind.
No, I think those were 3 great beers.
You didn't answer my question, but
I'm
that's fine.
sorry.
No? You're not getting any?
I think that this experience...
Just a little, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think this experience has inspired me to go out and sample more variety in beers. And when they do the sampler, they bring you a flight. I never do that.
I always judge people who do that.
I might as well. But I think what this has taught me is I may consider doing that. Just to take, especially if you have the brewer's notes.
Or if you're going... So, for example, if you were going to, say, Reuben's Brewery down in Seattle, and you know you're not going to be there very often, you can get a lot of their main IPAs up here. So that might be a good time to do the flight, where you go, I'm going to try as many of these as I can, smaller amount. I agree. Yeah, I think I would do that in the future. So what were the notes on this one, the Quad?
So I said it was a 10% ABV, Pilsner malts, and Belgian candy sugar. This is highlighted as a very big beer. I don't know what that means.
And the
though.
brewer's notes, big is underlined.
Big.
I'm curious now what candy sugar is. We're going to have to look that up eventually. I assume, Belgian chocolates, that's a big thing. Maybe this is the kind of sugar they use in that.
I have some ideas, but that would be for the secret podcast.
Oh, speaking of real quick, the secret podcast, we are trying to decide where and when we're going to have it and who's invited. So good luck to our listeners.
This could be like Willy Wonka. You might get a golden ticket.
Or you might have to find one underneath the chair somewhere.
Or, it's like when one of those, the front men from a band is like, I'm going to do a show today. I'm not saying where I'm doing it. It's just an acoustic session by myself. You're going to have to try to find me.
And just show up and you might see us.
Not recording, obviously.
Okay, here we go.
All right, this is beer number 4.
The Quad.
The Quad.
It does also smell sweet already. I would say I feel like smelling some melon or some banana in there.
Oregon State University.
Gosh. Smooth again. I mean, the crazy part is that it's smooth and it's 10%. 10% shouldn't be smooth.
No. This is...
10% is that beer where, you drink it and you probably got it in a snifter, and at the end you kind of give a little one of those side, like, whew, okay, here we go.
Okay, drink number 2, you could taste the 10%.
Well, drink number 2. Oh,
I actually
number 2?
agree.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second.
It's funny how your palate changes that way, because I did just have a second drink as I was saying that, and I could feel it.
Second drink almost felt like a bourbon.
Had some quality similar to that.
So do you think it just gravitates toward the bottom of the glass?
I mean, alcohol should float to the top, right? Because it's lighter than...
What would you pair this with?
Wow. I mean, this is one of those almost dessert kind of beers. Like, you can feel more so on this one, I feel like, than the last 3. The sweetness of it. Like, you take it away and your lips feel a little bit sticky, kind of.
This is like the port wine of beer.
Yeah, this is like you have it as a dessert in a snifter at the end of the night. You're reading your novel about, it's one of the many many books say from the oeuvre of John Steinbeck, and you're halfway through Grapes of Wrath, and the fire is going. It's the winter. I think that's the setting that I'd be having this, and I probably wouldn't have anything to eat with it. But you could probably have a nice steak.
I was thinking that like maybe after your steak a little bit, maybe a nice
What they call that, an
porterhouse
aperitif?
or a good fillet. But, with steak, I'm gravitating toward a nice red wine.
That might be one for a future podcast.
Yes.
I don't do the red wine.
Oh,
It gives me just
no. You can just
listen,
do like a little. Oh,
It's not that I don't like the flavor. I feel like I get instant heartburn when I do red wine.
really?
Yes, it's just like I can feel the burning in my throat.
I feel like
is that
heartburn.
$2 Chuck or
Ooh.
I am
$2
offended that you would
I don't know.
that you would say that I'm only drinking $2 Chucks.
I don't
which,
know.
by the way, Charles Schwab, I believe, is what it was called. Yeah, the $2 Chuck.
Yeah.
I thought it was fine back in the day in college.
$2 Chuck is not a bad wine. Now, Boone's Farm is a bad wine.
That's true. You get the sort of sour vinegar flavor there.
So I feel like heartburn with regards to red wine is directly proportional to how much I've eaten.
Generally speaking, for me, heartburn is directly related to how much I've eaten. For some reason, though, I get the heartburn vibe with the red wine, regardless.
I have never experienced heartburn.
What? Really?
So,
You've never had acid reflux?
no. Like, I don't know. Like, I've never had Tums.
I'm astounded. I'm 35 and I already have omeprazole every now and then, which is
What is that?
like the over-the-counter drug to.
So is it
I don't wanna get into the
is
science
it like
of it,
your
but-
heart area
has nothing to do
feels
with your
burning,
heart.
It is.
your chest area, and then up through your esophagus?
It is. Yeah. There's like maybe a little flapper valve somewhere in your esophagus that keeps gastric acid where it needs to be.
I think they call it a sphincter, don't they? I think it's the same principle.
Okay. Well,
I'm speechless.
I
And I
think it's the
believe that
esophageal.
gastric acid,
Yeah.
passes
So it goes up into your throat?
beyond where it is meant to be.
Yeah.
And then so you have a feeling of discomfort.
I get it more in my throat. And if it's bad enough, yeah, you can almost, like, it affects your voice. I feel like you start to get sort of a cough. Yeah.
Well, I feel fortunate.
Yeah. I don't know why I have it.
Well, that was a special night. I would probably, if I had to rank those, I would probably go, and this is just me, I think the double, which was beer number 3, would be my favorite. I think the Goza was my second favorite. And just from a drinkability standpoint, the Saison number 3 and the Quad number 4, and I like the Quad, but I'd probably have that number 4.
I almost agree. I would flip the Goza and the Saison. I'd say double 1, Saison 2, Goza 3, Quad 4. And for me, just because I would never want more than the amount that was like 3 ounces of that Quad than I just had. Like,
Yeah.
It's 100% a big beer. It's,
Oh, you can tell at the end.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those ones where, I normally get a little annoyed when they give me the snifter, like the small goblet at the
brewery.
At the
We're like,
brewery.
why can't I have a 24 ounce?
Yeah, well, because
Yeah.
I'd be on my face. But in this case, I wouldn't even want that much. I wouldn't want the little schooner.
But 3 ounces of that Quad
Perfect.
was great.
Yeah.
So my number 1 is the double, Saison 2, Goza 3, and Quad 4. But the Saison and the Goza, great summer beers.
Great summer beers. And it might have opened a door for me for both Saisons and what I used to call a Gose, but now is apparently a Goza. Rosario Market I want to talk about for a minute. So I'm gonna walk in there sometime in the next couple weeks and ask for a Goza.
And you're going to ask
How do you think
where?
that's going to go?
They're not going to know what I'm talking about. But remember on our pilot episode, we talked about how they now have a door.
Yeah,
There's a real door.
A door from a house.
So I went in there last week, and they now have a carpet inside the door.
But just that front walkway area.
Or in the whole
doesn't
area.
extend.
The whole.
No, but it's not like store carpet, like black, rub your feet off
It's
carpet.
like a shag carpet.
It's like a carpet like you would walk into your grandmother's house.
So are they going to rebrand that and say
Is
the
someone
Rosario
living there?
Beer house?
It's like when you walk in, it's like, and the front is not all windows now, so it's a little darker. It's just got a completely different feel.
I think they need to run with that.
I do too. I don't see any reason why not.
I think that Rosario's market doesn't matter what they do. Everyone goes there all the time.
You know what they could be pretty close to then turning it into because of some of the paraphernalia they already carry? They could almost turn it into, oh man, what's the tobacco that comes in the really tall thing that's got the water in the bottom and you got the hoses that come out of it? Kind of comes from India, I think. Hookah. They could turn that into some sort of a hookah lounge that sells beer and all the other stuff they sell. They get the carpet from floor to ceiling, carpet from floor to ceiling.
So original hookah is tobacco?
Flavored
tobacco, and you have like a...
Are you asking because you don't know, or are you explaining for the
No,
podcast?
I'm asking because I don't know.
Oh, okay. So have you?
Hookah'd?
Yeah.
Never.
Oh.
I've never hookah'd.
Oh, so I'm the one that's explaining this. This must be some sort of hipster thing. So I haven't hookah'd in a long time, but
That sounds funny.
back at Western, there was a hookah lounge there for a while, and I went to a hookah lounge also in San Diego, and basically, you go in this place, it's dark. It feels like what I would imagine an opium den would feel like, and there's just soft plushes everywhere, and you can sit down around this table, and they'll bring out this really tall thing. Normally it'd be about maybe 2 to 3 feet tall, and the bottom is water, and then in the middle you put your tobacco that I think has been soaked in some different things that give it a flavor. So you can choose whatever flavor you'd want, and then they wrap the top in aluminum foil and they poke holes in the top of that, and that aluminum foil is right over the top of where the tobacco is, and then you take coals that are hot coals and you put those above right on top of that aluminum foil. So then you breathe in through this like hose
Tube?
Yeah, it's like a hose. Yeah, it's got like a metal end to it, and it's connected to the water at the bottom, and so it sort of steam vaporizes, bubbles that tobacco through it, and I'm super sensitive when it comes to tobacco and nicotine, so I haven't had it in a super long time, but it was one of those things that you could have some of, even if you couldn't handle much tobacco, and just kind of sit there in the lounge and hang out. In some ways, now that I think about it, it's almost like the precursor to vaping in some ways.
And does it give you a buzz or a headache?
Not quite like normal. It's not quite the same as if you were smoking other tobacco products. Like, it gives you a buzz like you would get from tobacco, but it's a lot less harsh.
So how would this fall into like the spectrum of like saying the first time you put in chewing tobacco?
As far as strength?
Like doing a hookah of tobacco.
I mean, if you smoked the whole thing, it'd probably mess you up pretty good, but it would be a lot less...
less nicotine?
A lot less potent than chewing.
Interesting.
Maybe
I've never been to we never had.
Maybe this is a secret podcast thing.
Never had much desire.
We definitely could talk about There will be yes.
I've never had any desire to hookah.
I mean, did you realize what it was before I just explained it?
No, I
yeah, I
did.
knew.
Yeah.
I knew.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other versions of hookahs that I've heard of,
Okay.
but I've never been to an area or a place or someone that said, "Hey, do you want to go to a hookah bar?" And do you say smoke tobacco?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's definitely an aspect of it that is the social aspect. Like you're all sitting around together. You all chose this. There are multiple hoses coming off of it.
Yes.
And so whenever you want, you just grab a hose and then you put it back and you guys are just hanging out talking. You know, it sort of feels like this podcast is like a hookah without the hookah.
I'll be damned.
That's
It's almost
that's
like
awesome.
this podcast could be called Sitting Around the Hookah without one.
That's good stuff.
Huh.
We learned something new today, Swappy.
Hey,
We
you're
do,
welcome.
you know, I just feel like if the viewing audience listens long enough, he or she is going to learn something that probably can enrich lives.
Speaking of learning something, we have a great learning opportunity coming up here for all those listeners from the PNW. We're going to be talking about the top 3 all-time sports teams from the state of Washington in all sports. Welcome back from our break here at the View from the Rock podcast. We just finished up talking about 4 beers from Oregon State University. From their brewmaster, gave them especially to us through a friend of the podcast, Ross Metcalf. And we were all shocked and surprised by what we just tasted. 4 beers that normally we wouldn't choose, but we were impressed with what they had to offer. Did we ever get we did get a top 4 from you as far as which order would go, Morgie. But yeah, that was awesome. So again, thanks to Ross Metcalf for making that happen. Next up, we have...
First off, real quick, how did that happen?
What?
Like, we need to talk to Ross and just figure out how that happened.
If we knew what he
That's
did for a living, it probably would help answer that question.
Well, he's... What, Ross? He's an engineer, isn't he?
Specific
I disagree.
tasks?
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about here. So, well, and what would be important to know is if he has some sort of connection to where I'm serious, like I would drive all the way to Corvallis. I would bring this equipment with us, and I would love to record a podcast episode at,
Yeah, baby.
there was some more sampling of the Goza going on because that was a fan favorite here in Yellow Dog Studios. And that almost went over the brim. That was a volcano out of the little tiny glasses or ramekins that we're drinking out of right now.
So what are they called?
What?
The glasses?
Oh my gosh, she's doing it again.
No, that was a great pour.
That is a really strong meniscus we have there. Do you know what a meniscus is?
Yeah, it's in your knee.
Okay. No, it's the tension from the liquid that builds up, and it is what keeps the liquid from overflowing at the top of the glass. The meniscus is the tension on the edge that's curved, and if you break the meniscus, then that's when it would flow over the edge, and you'd have too much liquid above the rim.
Didn't we used to call that surface tension?
Well, it's
Or just an overpour?
it is part of surface tension or liquid tension.
Oh, man, I'm learning so much.
Okay. I'm going to get this podcast back on the right track. And next up, we have our top 3 all-time sports teams from the state of Washington in all sports. You know, at our break, it probably would have been a good idea if we had talked about that a little bit, but I think we all have our own top 3. So does anyone want to start off? I assume we want to go 3-2 and then 3-2-3-2, or...
Yeah, 3-3-3 and then 2-2-2.
Okay, we can do that. All right, who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Top 3. So I've got 4, and I bet between the 3 of us, there's a lot of commonalities. So number 3, and they are number 3. Well, several of these choices did not win championships, but this is one that is not number 1 because they did not win a championship. Number 3 is going to be the Pick your year. Sean Kemp, Gary Payton Sonics. The greatest basketball team that I was ever a fan of. Never won a championship. Had a lot of swag. Loved the coach. The coach had a lot of swagger. Loved the broadcast crew. Kevin Calabro, Marcus Johnson.
Get on that magic carpet and ride, baby.
Oh, my
If we
God.
get the Sonics back, he better come back immediately.
And maybe a couple other sayings that go for the secret podcast.
Yes.
But they were just everything about them. Every night that you watched that team, it was fun.
So that is the 96 Sonics?
Pick your year. 96, 97, 98. You know, I liked them better when they had Detlef, but I can't remember what year specifically that was.
That is my number 3 as well.
Oh.
Everything you said and more. It was so fun. And I was a senior at Pacific, or junior year actually, and it was so fun to just have a team that we could root for and living in Oregon, and the Blazers could suck it because everything's about, Washington versus Oregon back then.
Yeah, I struggle with people who have decided that they're now Blazers fans after being Sonics fans. That makes no sense to me. That would be like you are a New York Yankees fan and all of the New York teams leave, and so you become a Boston Red Sox fan. That would never happen. Like, obviously it's not as big as those two teams, but I have no reason to like the Blazers.
But it's the younger generation, the kids. Their only game that they can go to. I mean, there's kids. Swap drove the kids down.
Yeah.
Because that's the only game we can go to. There's no.
At one point, we could have went to the Vancouver Grizzlies, but not anymore.
I think we'll be back in 2 to 3 years.
It's
Sonics.
That
maybe a
quick
topic
turnaround.
for another podcast, but it's a travesty.
Yeah. Those teams obviously were great. Unfortunately, my memories. Well, obviously, I was like 8 for the 96 team, and I remember them with George Karl and that crew. My better memories, unfortunately, are of the later teams with like Vin Baker. And those are not as fond of memories after we traded away Sean Kemp to the Bucks. I don't know that any team won. What? Cavs. Cavs? No.
There you go.
No, it was Bucks.
No.
It was a 3-team trade then.
But I know, yes.
Okay.
But Kemp did not go to the Bucks.
He went to the Cavs, and we got Vin Baker
99.
from the Bucks. Yeah.
Correct?
Baker went to the Bucks.
We got Baker from the Bucks.
Kemp went to the Cavs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, we don't need to relive that, but I think both of them were overweight alcoholics when it came down to it, right? Both at one point, they got to that point.
They were, but at one point, Vin Baker was an all-star, and at one point, Sean Kemp might have been top 5 in the league.
Yeah, and they should be remembered that way. So I won't say a Sonics team, even though, gosh, my grandma loved to watch those Sonics. I mean, she was deaf, couldn't hear a thing on the TV, but every night she would watch those Sonics games. Number 3 for me, it's tough. I would say, just because I'm not as big of a baseball fan, I'd probably actually put the 116 Mariners there, because that was an unbelievable year. But
01?
Yeah, it was 01.
I still have the newspaper up in my room. Sweet Lou Piniella, Brett Boone on to Juice. It was.
I actually didn't necessarily
even think of
of
that.
the
I
01
know.
Mariners, because the 01 Mariners were not, to me, as impactful as my number 2 team, the 95 Mariners.
Sure. And again, for me, I was 7. Like, I remember it, but it's I was young.
So 95 Mariners, Randy Johnson, who would try to kill you with his fastball.
Didn't he?
Kill a bird?
Yes.
Yeah.
1 in a million.
But that wasn't with the Mariners, correct?
Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
Norm Charlton out of the pen. Buhner. My wife hates Buhner.
Did we have Heathcliff
Why does
Slocum
your
at
wife
that
hate
point?
Jay Buhner?
What?
That's a topic for a different podcast.
You know who looks like Jay Buhner?
I played against Jay Buhner's brother in college.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, Jay Buhner we acquired from the Yankees, right? And what did we send to them? Do you remember?
Ken Phelps.
Yeah.
Oh,
Also-
Phelps.
He was underrated.
Oh, yeah.
He made
Great
it
first
into a-
baseman. A Big Red.
Big
Redhead.
Red.
He made it into a Seinfeld episode as well.
He did.
Ken Phelps did?
That trade.
Oh.
Yeah.
Digger.
So that's your number 2.
That's my number 2. 95 Mariners.
I mean, I'll say, to add on, that was my time when I was going to the game as part of the Little League, you know? You'd sit up there with your whole Little League team up in the nosebleeds.
Oh, at
and so those are-
350
yeah.
section.
So there's some great memories back in the Kingdom, but...
So 1995, was that probably October?
Yeah.
I'm sitting in study hall at Pacific, and we had study hall, and we had to do it. And we're like, Coach, we have to get out. The Mariners are playing. He's like, no, but we'll play it here. So we had it on the radio. So Sean Eaton and I are the only real Mariner fans. Big Worm.
I know Sean.
Yeah. And just listening to the game on the radio from
Niehaus and Riz.
Oh, it was amazing.
Was that the one game playoff against the
Yes,
Angels?
yes. And we're sitting there and then have to come back and watch it on Sports Center just a little, because back then it wasn't very, we didn't have the recap that we do now.
Yeah.
We stood up and like screaming, and we're like, screw you, Coach, we're out. And we just walked out of study hall.
So you remember the big play in the night in that one game playoff? We're up 1-0.
Was that Edgar?
It's a pitcher's duel. It's Randy Johnson and Mark Langston for the Angels,
Former Mariner.
and it's 1-0. It's maybe the 7th inning. We're up 1-0 and just grinding. Bases loaded, 2 outs. Luis Soho, who looks like a guy that might work at a liquor store.
Dude, my brother and I used to call him Luis Slow-Mo. He was slow.
Luis Soho and like does everything. Like kids right now play baseball and they have hitting coaches and all this crap. And Luis Soho does nothing the way anyone teaches you to do anything. So he hits a ball and it's like a 47 hopper up the first base line with some English on it. And JT Snow can't quite get to it. And it rolls into the Angels bullpen. And everybody scores, and then there's an overthrow on the third guy, the guy that started at first base. There's an overthrow at the plate, and Luis Soho, who hit the ball, scores from third and goes sliding into the plate, and he looks like he needs like a ventilator, and it turns into like this grand slam, kind of like a little league grand slam. 4 guys score, and the ball was hit like
Just a one hopper that was a bad hop on a shitty field.
it just kind of rolled past the first baseman on turf into the bullpen.
The Kingdom was awful.
The Kingdom was awesome.
It was awesome for us,
It-
but awful.
Oh,
Had so much ambiance.
I remember going in 1985 and driving down and just paying $5 for a ticket with my dad and going and sit in front row because there was no one there.
you'd walk down there.
Oh, we just walk down and sit down, and then guys would throw a ball to you and sign it. I think I have 10 balls here in the basement. Might even be currently in this room, and I have no idea who signed them.
Oh, yeah, you get a ball and some guy would just go
Yeah.
and give it to you.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. We had a podcast about teams we love to hate, but us talking about these two teams has reminded me of the teams originally that I really hated. And so with the Sonics, I hated the Kings so much. Oh man, I hated the Kings.
Vlade Divac.
And Chris Webber.
But that's a different era, though.
my
Like
That is after. You were right, but they probably had Mitch Richmond. at
Chris
the time.
Webber.
Mitch Richmond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe I didn't hate that one, but it just reminds me of them. And the other team, and I'm trying to remember if this is a different era too. I hated the Angels. Like when they had Garrett Anderson, Darren Erstad, Tim Salmon. Now, is that a later team than that one we do playing?
I think that's about the same vintage. And Garrett Anderson is probably
killed us.
Yeah, like
Oh, dude, he always killed
if
us.
he played his career against the Mariners, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
No doubt.
why is there some team players that just kill us? It's the history of the Mariners.
You know another one who killed the Mariners? Rafael Palmeiro.
Oh.
Brutal.
Oh my God.
Okay, Ruck, you're number 2.
My number 2, I was kind of going back and forth. I feel like I need to have a Seahawks team in here, and it's hard to go against Matt Hasselbeck and the Seahawks team that went to the Super Bowl, but it was a painful loss, and I just want to make sure that our only Super Bowl we won with the Legion of Boom, which kind of defined what Seahawks football was, gets recognized. So I'd say that 2000 whatever team that was, 2013 Seahawks team
That won it?
Yeah, that won it.
2014.
Yeah,
I had to look it up
2014.
today.
Oh shoot, I took 1 year. 2014. Yeah, like, I mean, I don't know if it was the year before or the year before that, but just all the pieces we ended up getting together, like that started with Marshawn Lynch and the beast run that he had, which he had when we still had Matt Hasselbeck on the team. We had him and Marshawn Lynch, and that was against the Saints, and we were 7-9.
Yeah, that was the year we were 7-9.
That was Carroll's second year, I believe.
The Rumble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my number 2 is the 2014 Seahawks.
Oh, same.
Yeah. Just us winning.
Legion of Boom.
Oh, Legion of Boom, and just so good defensively. Like, we were, like, it was amazing. When you saw that first quarter, when Demaryius Thomas, rest in peace, comes across the lane and
Bam Bam Kim.
just boom, hits him, and we're just screaming. It was.
Hey, can we just talk for a second about who the Seahawks signed yesterday?
Bobby Wagner.
Bobby Wagner's back for 1 year.
This feels so good.
I know. It's
I-
awesome.
I
I
just-
think it's amazing.
I've got goosebumps.
Yeah, I think it's going to make us better.
I mean, we're not really.
We could
like
win
a-
10 games.
We won 9 last year.
Okay, so then we'll win 11.
So
11-6, baby. Let's go.
I mean, I aspire for more than that. I would just say that.
What, you think we're going to be 12-5? Jeez,
we're not a reaction show as far as like keeping up with the Seahawks on the daily or any of the sports, but I feel like this offseason for the Seahawks is very reminiscent of a time after we had one of our greatest drafts where we drafted Cam Chancellor and all those dudes, all those studs, Richard Sherman. I forget, there was a couple drafts in a row where we did that. And we had an offseason where we got Averill and some of these guys that were
High
a little
hips.
under the radar.
High hips.
Browner was not part of that.
Well, we got him out of Canada. But
High
my point
hips.
is we had some great draft class. All of a sudden, free agency, excellent. And it's feeling good. I'm just going to say I've got similar feelings. I'm not making any predictions.
No,
but
but
it feels good.
Hey, so we're back to the old school where we lost the quarterback, who's now big time. Now we're getting back to.
Are you trying to avoid saying his name? Is that we don't say his name on this
No,
podcast?
Russell gave us a championship.
He's the greatest quarterback in Seahawks history, and he's probably going to be a
But
Hall of Famer unless he continues to mess up his legacy.
If you would look just a little bit left to the studio, down the hall, he is not pictured on the Wheaties box. He's turned around, according to my kids.
He's the A-Rod.
He's a prima donna.
He's the A-Rod of football.
Oh,
Yeah.
he turned into a diva.
He's the A-Rod of football.
I mean, the crater job that his career just took is something that books will be written about, documentaries will be made about, and if he's able to turn it around, there will also be documentaries made about that turnaround because it would be amazing if he could actually get people to like him again.
Who's our number one?
So hold on, my number 2, just to end. I did cry a lot when we won the Super Bowl.
There's no shame in that.
Like,
It's the only sports
Loved
championship
it.
you've experienced.
Didn't you like run up D Avenue?
no, we actually drove. I
That's
run
probably a bad
halfway.
idea.
You ran halfway up D?
Yeah, and then got tired. And then got a ride from the family. And then we went up to Andy's and just celebrated.
Well, the hard part for me is we should have won the next year.
That's tough. Try not to think about that.
So that will be on the secret podcast. Because there was a lot of stuff that happened that was different.
Some yelling.
Okay.
So
Number one. Here we go. Swappy.
Okay, this is a no-brainer for me, and I think it's the same one as you have. 90-91 Huskies. Greatest team in the history of college football.
100% agree. Put my foot. I want to smack something and say that. Yes, I agree.
So that was a split national championship because Miami was also undefeated. Huskies would have absolutely hammered Miami.
And then we played them in '94 and put the smack down at Miami.
The whammy in Miami.
How many games did they had won?
They had won like 1,000 in a row.
I mean, what are the
Orange
odds
Bowl.
that we go to the University of Miami from Seattle and put the smack down?
And then they came here when Neuheisel was coach, and we beat them here, like 90. Like Tuiasosopo was quarterback, 98.
99.
Yeah.
So that year, well, go ahead, Swap. It's your number one.
No, I don't have a whole lot else to say. You had the greatest football player in the history of college football, Steve Entman, on the line.
Napoleon Kaufman as a freshman.
Billy
Mario
Joe Holbert.
Bailey. Oh. Hoffman's.
Oh,
Palcoa
yeah.
from Marysville. Little shout out to your wife, Kelsey.
A Marysville grad.
But it was the most fun I've ever seen. I went to every game that year.
So is that your number one?
Yeah.
Because we have in the PE locker room
Bad to the bone.
the greatest poster. You're going to cry, aren't you?
No, I'm not going to, but I might. But here's the deal. That night, that poster, I happened to be hanging out with someone that lived down there. And so she was like, okay, here's the poster. She took it off the wall of her dormitory floor. So I took it, and I have it now. Bad to the bone. Steve Entman, Soup Mala Mala.
Dave Hoffman?
Nope.
No?
Don Jones.
Donald Jones. And who's the last one? Is it Walter Bailey?
No. It might be Walter Bailey. But it's amazing. So Bad to the Bone is sitting in our locker room every day.
Yes.
And it's the greatest team in the history of, for UW.
It's the greatest team in the history of college football. I don't care what the analytics say, what the experts say.
So they say Miami's better.
Wrong.
So it was hard. So 1991.
I did not experience that at all. I was 3. I have no memory of that UW team.
So the Huskies were dominant for like a 3-year run. Like the best team in college football.
And this was before BCS, so there's no crowning really, except for in the AP polls, whatnot, right?
2 polls.
Yeah.
AP and coaches.
Yeah.
And then so there was a split, right? It was a split?
It was split. And before our year, Miami was good.
Yeah.
So everyone thought they were the best. So then we go into, was it 94 when we went over there and dominated them?
Yeah, and we'd had a little bit of a lull because Don James was gone. Lambright took over. You know, we had a couple years we were 9-3, but we went in there and just hammered them.
I remember that game. Are you talking about 94?
94, 95, the whammy in Miami.
Yeah.
In the same year, did we play Nebraska, or is that at home?
So the 91 year, we went to Nebraska and beat them.
And the year before, I think they came here.
Yeah.
Or maybe that was vice versa.
And that's when Nebraska was a powerhouse.
Yeah.
Oh,
How was their coach? his name? I forget.
Tom Osborne.
There you go.
And we just hammered him, just dominated him. We had Lincoln Kennedy on the line.
So that's it right there.
He's the fourth guy in Bad to the Bone.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So every day the kids come in, they walk and see that photo. They're like, who are those guys?
And Emtman looks like he's going to come off the poster and just kill you.
From Eastern Washington,
Cheney.
just bucking hay every day to get stronger.
I wish I could have experienced that.
Okay, Rock.
You know, so this is my curveball. I put this down because this was an experience I had in person with this one team, and it's not a professional team. We didn't say it had to be a professional team. So at one point, there was the longest football win streak for a high school team in the nation. It was set by De La Salle. It ended at 151 games. It ended at Quest Field playing against the Bellevue Wolverines. I was there. I watched that game. That was an amazing game to watch. Yes. It was in 2006. They had J.R. Hasty at the time, would go on to play at UW. They won 39-20 over that team. Bellevue just running the wing tee. I think they threw 3 passes the whole game, something like that. At the time, Bellevue was just another level, probably because they were cheating, but it was a different level. I think eventually what their coach, Bruce Goncharoff, had to leave because he was accepting outside money from the boosters so he could get paid $60,000 a year to coach high school football.
Is that frowned upon?
That is frowned upon.
$60,000 a year
Just to
coach a
football.
team?
Yeah.
How's that sound, Swappy? High school baseball?
Hey, if he's worth that, I am definitely worth what I'm making.
So, they end up starting their own win streak. I think they got to 67, but that game, it was just wild. As a high schooler, going down and watching that was one of the great sports experiences I've had. And then on the way home, we stopped at Denny's, and one of my friends said, I can drink this chocolate milkshake before the waitress leaves the table. And if I do, you have to buy me another one. And he did. So we bought him another one. And he did both of them. And in the car, getting onto the on-ramp, he ends up making us pull over. He gets out and he throws up this chocolate mess all over the side of the highway. And his comment was, it was still cold coming out.
Oh, wow.
Dave Evans, son of Vicki Evans, who did that.
Well, we covered a lot of ground there. We had, in the back half of this episode, 4 tremendous beers from Oregon State and a lot of reminiscing about great Northwest sports teams.
Thank you, Ross, for getting those beers. Whatever you had to do, that was amazing.
Yeah, that was a good time. Great episode. I think one of the all-time great episodes. I think we're going to remember this for a long time to come. Again, this is part 2 of part 1. If you're at this point and you didn't hear part 1, I would say go back and listen to that because that was a equally good part of this episode. Just like always, if you're listening to us on YouTube, you can find us on any one of your major podcast apps, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Spotify. We'll see you in a couple weeks probably, whenever you listen to this episode. We're off for spring break, and we shall return.